My name is Juliet Crane. I am the writer for the Edgar Allan Poe Speakeasy.
My name is Patrick O'Sullivan in the Edgar Allan Poe Speakeasy. Well, tonight I was the narrator and I did the story, The Mask of Red Death. I also sometimes perform the story, The Black Cat.
As and where the master of macabre holds court. Tonight, we invite you to step into the haunting realm of one of literature's most enigmatic figures, Edgar Allan Poe.
Hello. You can say it back. What the hell was that? Hello, welcome to the Edgar Allan Poe Speakeasy.
The inspiration came behind a lot of, I think, most people's introduction to Edgar Allan Poe, which came through most people's, elementary education, if not their middle school or perhaps high school a bit later in life. And that was really where the enthusiasm for myself started. And so being a lifelong Poe fanatic, I wanted to kind of bring something a bit more less traditional as far as, consumption of different kinds of things.
Edgar Allan Poe. Over a century and a half since his death in 1849, no one remains as synonymous with mystery and macabre in literature as he. A true master of his words. EAP, as he's known in the streets, is often attributed with being the first American author to make a living exclusively through writing. So much like writers today, he didn't make any money. In his more personal facets of life, he was plagued by copious amounts of death, sickness, and disease. Perhaps this is why Poe's words often dwell in the dark corners of our minds, of our literary conscience, often straddling the line between petrifyingly plausible yet impossible. Tonight, we present to you four of Poe's most beloved works in our creative adaptation.
I think one of the greatest gifts of this as an actor is that these stories were never written to be acted, right? They're not plays, they're stories. Mm-hmm. So we get to kind of respectfully make it our own. And within that is, finding the acting choices within it and what is this story that you're going to tell where you're really only on stage by yourself. So you're performing a monologue and trying to bring all those emotions to one piece, which I find it very challenging compared to other things I've done because it doesn't start with that. Even the language itself is not written per se in like theater language form, but yeah, it's a great opportunity and I relish the challenge.
A low rhythmic sound, not unlike the ticking of a clock. Quiet at first, but a little louder. And I realized it was the old man's heartbeat. And louder and quicker it grew. His terror must have been absolute. And louder and quicker it grew till I thought the heart must burst. And louder and quicker until a new fear seized me. Could this sound possibly be heard by a neighbor? Well, the old man's time had come. I leapt into the room. He shrieked once, and once only. I pulled him to the floor and dragged the heavy bed atop his body. And I waited. The sound continued, unabated, for many minutes, until, finally, it ceased.
We vary from different kinds of historic vicinities, so sometimes they're, like I said, it has to be really kind of Victorian inspired for us to really select them in the first place. We can't always access that in certain smaller towns, but that is our primary goal, is making sure we're as close as we can be to Poe's lifespan and that kind of time frame. So we've done places like in Sarasota, like the Barnum and Bailey, the family, they had owned a lovely property down there. Any kind of estate, that is right up our alley. Also museums, where anything as long as it's in the 1800s, were there.
LA location was really intimate, so that particular performance had a totally different feel in a really good way. Whereas this one, you get the cemetery experience, and I think that's what's great about the show, it being so malleable.
My friends, Edgar's young life was a hard and difficult road. Born in 1809 to actors David and Elizabeth Poe. Only a year after his grand entrance into the world, Edgar's father would step away from the family, never to be seen or heard from again. And the year following that, his mother would fall gravely ill with a disease that would ravage Edgar the rest of his life. And that disease goes by the name of tuberculosis. Remember this well. Edgar was then separated from his two siblings and taken in by the Allan family of Richmond, Virginia. Although never formally adopted, he lived with them far into young adulthood, until his foster mother also falls ill. And the disease that will claim her life goes by the name of
tuberculosis.
Now this leaves Edgar alone with his foster father, and they are a bit at odds. His father encourages him to enroll at West Point, at the academy. After a few short months, Edgar discovers this is not the career path for him. He'd much rather be alone, late at night, scrawling away in his writing desk. Away from others, as he starts to recluse himself from his peers. Instead, he seems to find company and companionship in animals, especially cats.
Most fanatics of Poe, myself included, have a very hard time eliminating their least favorite stories down to their core stories that they actually really truly want to see brought to life. And inside of 90 minutes, that is very difficult to do, especially many of these stories had to be condensed down in their own original format to even get 4 in the place. But we went with things that would make people the most happy. So obviously you're gonna see the Raven. We don't wanna give too many spoiler alerts for those that maybe want to see in a different city. But it's a task. But as a little spoiler alert too, we will have a return of Poe that will have 4 new stories. So if you are not satisfied with the first rendition of Poe, then perhaps we will satisfy that quench in our second rendition.